My wife secretly married her boss after we lost everything in the foreclosure, and now she's claiming half of our $750, $0 estate, despite evidence she only knew him for 3 months and never officially divorced. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, spilling it all because I've hit a breaking point. The most unexpected thing happened last week. I caught my wife, Emily, in bed with her boss, Mark. And what made it even crazier? She's been lying to my face for months about how much she loves me, how she'd never do something so disgusting, all while secretly planning her escape. We'd been married for 10 years. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We had a modest house, a couple of decent cars, and enough savings to get by. That was until everything started falling apart. Our business went under after a brutal foreclosure, and suddenly we were drowning in debt. Emily's attitude shifted almost overnight. She became bitchy, dismissive, and cold. She'd lash out at me for the smallest thing, accuse me of not doing enough, and spend hours on her phone, texting, or scrolling social media. I knew she was hiding something, but I kept telling myself it was just stress. Then last month, I started noticing strange things. Her phone would be locked when she was in the shower, and she'd get defensive if I asked to see it. She'd leave her laptop open and quickly close it when I came near. But the biggest sign was the way she suddenly became obsessed with her appearance. She'd start wearing more makeup, changing her clothes more often, and sneaking out at odd hours. I'd ask where she was going, and she'd brush me off, say she was meeting friends or going to the gym. One night, I decided to follow her. I didn't plan to catch her cheating, I just wanted to see what she was up to. I parked a block away, kept my distance, and watched her slip out of the house at 9 p.m. She was dressed differently, more provocative than usual. I followed her to a fancy restaurant downtown, where she met a man I didn't recognize. They sat close, whispering and laughing a little too intimately. My stomach clenched. I knew then that something was seriously wrong. Next day, I looked through her phone. I found texts that made my blood boil. She was calling Mark babe, saying she couldn't wait to see him again, and she kept talking about their plans to run away together once she got her divorce. She claimed she'd never love me anymore, that I was just a burden, and that Mark was her real happiness. I also found receipts for hotel bookings, jewelry, and expensive dinners she'd arranged with him behind my back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. When I confronted her, Emily's reaction was classic. She denied everything at first, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things. Then she threw a fit, calling me insecure, jealous, and crazy for suspecting her. She insisted she was only talking to Mark about business, that he was just a friend, and that I was overreacting because I was losing it after losing everything. She said she was tired of pretending to care about our marriage when she'd already moved on emotionally. Her words cut deep, and I realized she'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. The thing is, she's been claiming she's entitled to half of our estate, about $750, $0, even though she only knew Mark for 3 months and we're not divorced. She says she's entitled to my money because she's been married to me for 10 years. But she conveniently forgets that we lost everything, that she's been cheating, and that she never legally divorced me. Her lies are relentless, and her attitude is pure entitlement. She's been bitchy, manipulative, and now she's trying to take what she can get, all while I'm sitting here trying to process how my wife of a decade turned into a stranger, a liar, and a thief. I'm not someone who's ever been good at confrontation, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her walk away with half our savings, especially after what she did. I started digging into the legal side, talking to a lawyer and gathering evidence. I want her to pay for this betrayal. But more than that, I want to understand how someone I loved for so long could turn into such a manipulative, selfish person. It's like I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore. This is just the beginning of what's been a nightmare, and I honestly don't know what's coming next. I just know I can't stay quiet anymore. After I found out about Emily's affair and her plans to claim half of our estate, everything changed. The house felt colder, heavier somehow, like the walls were closing in on me. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Mark, heard their whispers, felt the betrayal like a punch in the stomach. It was like my entire life had been a lie, and I was just now waking up to the truth. I knew I had to act fast, but I also had to keep my head clear. I spent the next few days poring over every scrap of evidence I could find. I pulled bank statements, emails, texts, anything that could prove she'd been lying. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case before I went to a lawyer. I also reached out to a private investigator I found online. I figured if she was sneaking around with Mark, there had to be more evidence somewhere. Sure enough, the pie started digging, and within a few days he came back with some shocking information. Emily had been seeing Mark at her office, in hotels, even during business trips she claimed to have gone on alone. She was lying about everything. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her act. She'd come home, act like everything was fine, but her attitude was colder than ever. She'd lash out at me, accuse me of being paranoid, say I was jealous and possessive. She'd tell me I was imagining things, that she was still married to me in name only, and that I was just a jealous fool. But I could see the cracks in her facade. I knew she was panicked, especially when I started asking questions about her bank accounts and her plans. Then, I found out she'd been talking about how she was going to milk the situation for everything she could get. She'd been researching divorce laws, trying to figure out how to claim half of our estate, even though she knew she wasn't legally divorced. She'd been telling her friends she was planning to take everything and leave me with nothing. That's when I realized I needed to get ahead of her. I couldn't let her manipulate the situation anymore. I met with my lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Steve who specializes in divorce and asset division. I explained everything, her affair, her plans, the evidence I had. Steve told me I had a strong case because Emily never legally divorced me, and she was trying to claim assets she wasn't entitled to. He advised me to file for divorce immediately and to prepare to contest any claim she made on our property. I also told him I wanted to keep the house, even if it meant fighting her in court. While all this was happening, I started making my own plans. I didn't want Emily to walk away with a dime more than what was fair. I knew she'd try to lie, cheat, and manipulate her way into getting as much as possible. So I set up a hidden camera in the living room, just in case she tried to make false accusations or steal things. I also started documenting everything: her odd behavior, her secret meetings, her attempts to access our bank accounts. It was like I was building a case against her, not just for the legal fight, but for my own peace of mind. One night I caught her trying to access our joint account online. She'd been trying to transfer money to some new business account she'd set up, supposedly for a side gig. I confronted her with the evidence and she exploded. She called me paranoid, controlling, and jealous, but I didn't care. I knew she was trying to drain what little we had left. That was the final straw. I told her to pack her bags. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way into half of my hard-earned money after everything she'd done. The next day, I filed for divorce. I also filed a motion to prevent her from claiming any part of our estate until the case was settled. I made it clear I wasn't going down without a fight. I had the evidence, I had the law on my side, and I was determined not to let her steal what was left of my life. It was a bitter victory, knowing she was still out there, lying and scheming, but at least now I had some control. What hurts the most is how she's been lying so convincingly, pretending to be this innocent wife while she was cheating, planning her escape, and trying to take everything I worked for. The betrayal cuts deep, especially because I loved her for so long. But I also realize I can't keep chasing a ghost of a marriage that was already dead. I've come to accept that I need to fight for what's mine, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply standing tall and not letting her get away with it. I guess the lesson here is that people can surprise you in the worst ways. You think you know someone, and then one day, everything shatters. It's a brutal wake-up call that trust can be broken in an instant. Now I'm just trying to pick up the pieces and move forward, even if it's one step at a time. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't be a victim of her lies anymore. After I filed for divorce and took steps to protect what was left of my estate, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally started taking control of the situation, and anger because I couldn't believe I'd been blind. For so long, Emily's lies, her manipulations, they all seemed so calculated. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how someone I'd loved for a decade could turn into this cold, selfish person. In the days that followed, I started hearing from friends and family. Some supported me, others told me to just let her go, that she was probably just chasing some fantasy with Mark. But I knew better. I saw her true colors now. She was a liar, a user, and a thief, and I was determined to make sure she paid for it. I also knew I had to be strategic about how I handled her next moves because she was already trying to spin her story to anyone who'd listen. Meanwhile, Emily's attitude grew more aggressive. She started calling me names, accusing me of trying to ruin her, claiming I was just jealous because she'd moved on so quickly. She insisted that she deserved half of everything, even though she'd only been with Mark for 3 months and never legally divorced me. That was her main argument, that we'd been married long enough and she was entitled to her share. She'd even gone as far as to threaten me with lawsuits if I didn't pay up or give her what she wanted. This made me realize I had to get serious about defending myself. I hired a lawyer who specialized in asset disputes and family law. His name was Mark, no relation to Emily, thankfully, and he was a sharp guy. We went over every detail, and he told me I had a very strong case. Since Emily had never filed for divorce, and she was trying to claim assets she wasn't legally entitled to, I could contest her claims and make sure she got nothing. But I also knew that Emily was the kind of person who would go to any lengths to get her way, including lying under oath or trying to manipulate the court. One thing I didn't expect was how quickly she started spreading rumors to her friends and even her family. She told everyone I was controlling, that I'd become a jealous, abusive monster who was trying to keep her from finding happiness. She lied about the reasons for the divorce, making it seem like I was the bad guy. I heard from some mutual friends that she'd told them I was crazy and possessive, trying to paint herself as the victim. It was infuriating, but I knew I had to stay calm and let the legal process do its work. I also discovered that she'd been secretly transferring money out of our joint accounts into her own. Every time I checked, there was less there. That's when I realized she was planning to drain everything before the court could catch her. I instructed my lawyer to freeze all her accounts and set up a trust account for the estate. I didn't want her to get her hands on a dime more than what she was legally entitled to, and I was determined to see this through. One night, I caught her trying to sneak out with some of the jewelry she'd bought with Mark. I confronted her again, and she spun a new story, that she was taking her things because she was leaving for good, even though I knew she was planning her next move. When I pressed her, she got defensive, calling me paranoid and controlling, but I had enough. I told her she needed to leave, and that I was going to fight her for every penny. That was the turning point. She packed her bags, but I made sure she left with nothing but the clothes on her back. I changed the locks, canceled her credit cards, and hired security to watch the house. I didn't want her coming back to try to take more. I also started gathering witnesses, friends who knew about her affair, her lies, and her manipulations. I wanted everything documented in case she tried to pull some stunt in court. The most surprising part was how quickly she turned her focus to Mark. She kept calling him the love of her life, saying she was finally free from her boring marriage with me. She was so convinced she'd won, but I knew better. Deep down, I knew she was desperate, and her desperation was only going to get worse. I was already planning my next move, how to beat her at her own game and make sure she paid for her betrayal. I've learned that when someone is willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate their way through a marriage, there's no reasoning with them. The only thing you can do is protect yourself and fight back. I'm not naive enough to think this is over. I expect her to try to twist the story again, to lie under oath, or even try to come back and take more. But I'm ready. I've got the evidence, the law on my side, and a new outlook. The whole thing has left me bitter, but it's also made me stronger. I see now how important it is to stand your ground when someone you trusted turns out to be a fraud. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't be a victim anymore. And honestly, that's the best revenge I could ask for. The court proceedings started a few weeks after I filed for divorce and contested Emily's claims to our estate. It was a whirlwind. Lawyers, affidavits, depositions. I spent countless nights going over everything, making sure every piece of evidence was in order. I had to be meticulous because I knew Emily would try to manipulate the system. She was already spinning stories to her friends about how I was abusive and controlling, trying to sway public opinion in her favor. But I had the truth, and I was determined to stick to it. Emily's attitude during this entire process was nothing short of toxic. She'd show up at court looking bitchy and dismissive, with her new boyfriend Mark often lurking in the background. She'd try to act innocent, claiming she was just confused and trying to find herself. But I knew better. She was just trying to get one last shot at grabbing what she thought was hers. She'd lie under oath, claiming she had no idea about the hotel bills or the jewelry she bought with Mark. She even denied ever meeting him at her office, even though I had photos, emails, and witnesses who confirmed her affair. One of the most infuriating moments was when she testified, claiming she was forced into the affair because I was emotionally abusive. She said I was controlling, jealous, and that I didn't support her dreams. It was pure bullshit. I kept my composure, but inside I was seething. I knew she was lying, and I had the evidence to prove it. I had texts from her, from Mark, and even recordings where she admitted to meeting him secretly. I wanted to scream at her, but I knew that wouldn't help. Meanwhile, I was also preparing my case to prevent her from claiming any part of the estate. I argued that she never legally divorced me, that she'd been unfaithful, and that she was attempting to manipulate the system for her own gain. My lawyer filed motions to freeze her assets and prevent her from transferring any more money. It was a strategic move. If she tried to drain the accounts or hide assets, I'd be ready. I also had witnesses ready to testify about her manipulative behavior and the lies she'd told friends and family. What really got to me was how she kept trying to gaslight me. She'd call, scream, accuse me of ruining her life, and say I was jealous of her happiness with Mark. She insisted she was free, that she finally found someone who loved her, and I was just an obstacle. I couldn't believe how good she was at pretending to be the victim, even as she schemed behind my back. Honestly, it made me question everything I thought I knew about her. Was she always this manipulative and selfish? Or did she just change after everything fell apart? During one of the hearings, Emily's lawyer tried to claim that I was abusive and controlling, trying to turn the court against me. But I had everything documented: texts, emails, witness statements that proved otherwise. I could see her desperation growing. She knew she was losing, and her attempts to sway the court were getting more frantic. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. Satisfaction because I knew I was right, and disgust because I was watching a woman I once loved turn into someone so unrecognizable. At the same time, I was also dealing with the emotional toll. Every session, every court appearance felt like a punch to the gut. I kept replaying our memories, trying to find where I went wrong, wondering if I could have done something differently. But deep down, I knew this was about her choices, not mine. She made her bed, and now she was trying to lie her way into a better position. I refused to let her. The most surprising thing was how many people started to see through her lies. Mutual friends who initially believed her sob stories started asking me questions, realizing she was spinning a different tale to everyone. Her family, too, seemed skeptical when I presented my evidence. They'd known Emily for years, and some admitted they never seen her act like this before. It was validation in a way that I wasn't the crazy one. She was the one who had been dishonest all along. As the hearings drew to a close, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was tired, emotionally drained, but also resolute. I knew she was going to keep fighting, but I was ready. I had the facts, the law, and the support to stand my ground. I also realized that this whole ordeal had changed me. I was no longer the naive husband who trusted blindly. I was hardened now, more cautious, but also more aware of how dangerous lies and betrayal can be. What I learned from this is that sometimes the truth is all you have. No matter how much someone tries to twist it, the facts will come out if you're patient and persistent. And in the end, justice isn't always about winning in court. It's about knowing you fought for what's right, even when everything else seems to be falling apart. I don't regret standing my ground because I know I did what I could to protect what was mine, and that's all anyone can really do. The court case finally wrapped up after what felt like an eternity. The judge's ruling was clear. Emily had no legal claim to our estate because she was still married, hadn't filed for divorce, and there was substantial evidence that she'd been unfaithful and manipulative. The court awarded me full control over the house, the savings, and all assets accumulated during our marriage. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. On one hand, I'd fought hard and won. On the other, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that haunted me. Once everything was settled legally, I decided I needed to cut all ties with Emily. I changed my phone number, blocked her on social media, and even moved out of the house temporarily. I couldn't bear to see her anymore, especially knowing what she'd done. I also went to see a therapist to process everything, the loss, the anger, the heartbreak. It was a rough few weeks, but I knew I had to focus on healing myself. During this time, Emily tried to reach me a few times. She sent angry texts, crying, blaming me for ruining her life, and insisting she deserved half because she was married to me for 10 years. But I wasn't interested in her guilt trips. I'd already made up my mind that I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. Her words didn't matter, her actions did. I had the evidence, I had the law, and I had my own conscience. Eventually, Emily moved out of town. I heard through friends that she was trying to start fresh with Mark, who she claimed was the love of her life. I couldn't believe how quickly she moved on. Honestly, I was angry at first, angry that she'd lied, cheated, and tried to steal from me. But over time, I realized I was better off without her. I'd been handed a brutal lesson about trust and betrayal, but I was also given a chance to rebuild. The most surprising part was how much I learned about myself during this ordeal. I used to be someone who believed in the good in people, who thought marriage was forever. But now I see that some people will do anything for money and selfish gain. I learned to be more cautious, more guarded, and to never ignore the signs of deception. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, is the only way to truly reclaim your life. Looking back, I realize I was naive to think that love and loyalty would always prevail. Emily's betrayal shattered that illusion, but it also made me stronger. I no longer feel the pain of her lies as intensely as I did at first. Instead, I feel a quiet resolve to protect myself, to be smarter about who I trust, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's that no matter how much you love someone, you have to watch for the red flags. If someone starts hiding things, becomes overly defensive, or tries to manipulate your trust, don't ignore it. Because once the trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to get back. And sometimes, the only way to truly move on is to fight for what's right and to walk away from the people who don't deserve your loyalty. That's what I'm doing now, rebuilding my life, one step at a time without her. And honestly, I feel free for the first time in a long while. Now, looking back on everything, I realize how much I've changed. The betrayal cut deep, but it also forced me to confront truths I'd been blind to for years. I used to believe that marriage was about trust, about sticking together through thick and thin, but I've learned that sometimes people will lie, cheat, and manipulate their way out of a relationship, regardless of the vows they made. That kind of disillusionment is hard to swallow, but it's also a lesson I won't forget. I've come to see that the biggest mistake I made was trusting blindly. I thought Emily was my partner, my best friend, the one I'd build a future with. Turns out she was just playing a role, one she carefully crafted to hide her true intentions. When everything fell apart, I realized that I had to rebuild not just my estate, but my sense of self. I had to learn to trust my instincts, read the signs, and never ignore those little red flags again. The experience has left me more guarded, yes, but also more aware of my worth. I now understand that standing up for yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable, is the only way to protect what's yours. I've also learned that revenge isn't about getting back at someone, but about reclaiming your dignity and peace of mind. I fought for my legal rights, for my sanity, and for my future, because no one else was going to do it for me. Most of all, I've realized that love should never come at the expense of your self-respect. If someone truly cares for you, they won't lie, cheat, or manipulate. They'll be honest even when it's difficult. And if they're not, it's better to walk away than to keep trying to fix something broken, because sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to leave the past behind and focus on rebuilding what's left. Today, I'm focusing on myself. I've started a new job, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and even started dating again, cautiously but with hope. The pain of betrayal will always stay with me, but it no longer defines me. I've learned that resilience isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up. Every time you do. So to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, my advice is simple. Trust yourself, protect your assets, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for standing your ground. The truth will come out in the end, and your integrity is worth more than any false promises or lies. Life will go on stronger, wiser, and more prepared for whatever comes next. And in the end, that's all that truly matters.